Shalom all. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School. Wishing you all welcome to our live classes here. And those of you watching on video, Shalom Aleichem. Well, the topic that we're going to discuss at this time, I've entitled, Is God Punishing Me? Now, divine insights into the Kabbalistic reality of divine rewards and punishments. Now, this is an important point to discuss because before we can actually talk about whether or not God is involved in your life, involved in punishing you or rewarding you, we better first take a step back and talk about our understanding of God in the first place. You see, when we come to reading the Bible, we read about God's interactions with human beings in a very, if you will, humanistic way. Or in other words, we think of God as the Bible portrays him as some kind of divine super being with whom we interact. Now, this is something that we need to put into a context. Why does the Bible speak like this? Our sages have taught us a very important point. Torah midaber b'lashon adam, meaning the Torah was written and was meant to be understood by human beings. Now, if the Torah, which contains all the sublime mysteries of the universe, was written in a way and a form which just laid out the mysteries, none of us to this very day would really understand its depths. This is actually a point that's made in a midrashic statement by the character, not the historical person, of Shimon Bar Yochai in a story, a legend that is taught in the Zohar as well. We must understand, and this might be difficult for some people, but got to let the truth be known. The nature of divine revelation is itself evolutionary, meaning it's a progression. God allows things to be revealed over time. Not everything's revealed all at once. So, when we said that the Torah was speaking the language of human beings, understand who those human beings were 1500 before the Common Era, which at the time, according to our faith, is when the Torah was received at Mount Sinai. Now, even that term, Torah Sinai, which is the foundation of our faith, what exactly does that mean? Well, you're going to have your fundamentalists thumping and saying, every word of the Torah of the 5 books of Moses came from Mount Sinai, in spite of the fact that we know historically that that is fundamentally false. When we interpret the term from Mount Sinai as being a point in time and space, actually from Sinai is a level of revelation, and it literally transcends space and time. Proof of the fact? Logic will dictate. Look at your Bible. Read the 5 books of Moses. When was the revelation of Mount Sinai? Everybody knows it was days after the Exodus from Egypt. When was the stories of the book of Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy recorded? These are the stories that happened years after the fact. After they walked out of the desert, they're in the lands of Moab and all the rest of this stuff. The stories that happened in the wilderness, of course, with the golden calf, which happened right after. Do you think that Moses was up on Mount Sinai writing the story of the golden calf days before it happened? The stories of Nadab and Abihu, the stories of Balak and Bilam, the discourses he would give. You think these were actually written down X amount of days after the Exodus? No. These revelations came over the period of time in the 40-year period when they were, or I should say before they came to the land of Israel. That is our faith. That is the understanding of our sages. So when we talk about the revelation of Sinai, it's a level, a madrega of learning, not necessarily encumbered to a specific point in space and time. And this is important to understand. Because just as Torah Sinai is a progressive revelation, so is all prophecy. Now, take a look at the prophecies of Isaiah. Go do your little biblical historical context there, and you'll find that the prophecies of Isaiah came about 1,000 years, give or take a century or so, after the revelation of Mount Sinai. Now, why is that important? 1,000 years is a long time. But there are insights and understandings about the nature of God that Isaiah revealed that the people in the day of Moses, maybe Moses knew, maybe certain prophets knew, but the rank and file didn't know and understand. Prophecy, revelation, insight is progressive, evolutionary. God releases information a bit at a time. Remember the wise words of Isaiah. As the heavens are above the earth, so God's ways are higher than our ways. God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Now, that's a concept that you and I will nod our head and understand. But did the rank and file Israelites coming out of Egypt understand that? Did the rank and file Israelites in the generation of Joshua, or even for that matter in the days of King David, understand that? I'm not so sure. King David might have understood that in Ruach HaKodesh. Solomon might have in his wisdom. But I'm not talking about those select few who had direct connection and therefore were in what we call the Masorah, the connection of the revelation. I'm talking about the regular everyday people. Well, when it comes to understanding God, for the most part, most of us are everyday people. And unless we enter into the depths of understanding the revelatory content, which is the study of Torah, we lack a lot of real important information that'll help us understand concepts and the realities of that which we're talking about now, like, is God punishing me? Let's go take another step back. Who and what is this, in quote, God of ours in the first place? Well, again, the Torah spoke to the everyday person. It was not written for the enlightened prophet. The enlightened prophet, the enlightened sage, knew how to go within the surface facade called the pshat to get to the deeper levels, which we call the sod. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody's mind is oriented to that. Not everybody's heart is directed in that direction. Some people, they just want simple things. There's nothing wrong with that. We have different levels of personality, or in Kabbalah speak, different levels of soul. You say that, fine. That's the way it is. So we accept that the way it is. But yet, we must recognize that just because things look one way at the surface, that doesn't mean that there is nothing else there. And therefore, when we look and read in the Bible, and we see words like God speaks, God hears, God is angry. Okay. Remember 10 Commandments? God has no form. You shall not make any face upon God. Right? When it says you shall not, Lohi Elohim aharim al panai, shall not have other gods upon my face. That's actually the literal translation of that 10 Commandment. It doesn't mean before me. It means on my face. Don't call something God that isn't. It's pretty much what it means. Well, in our religious tradition at that surface level, in order to help the everyday individual understand, the Torah, speaking the language of man, spoke about God in a way that the everyday person from the days of Egypt would understand the concept of a God. And even as that evolved over centuries, the likes of which we see in Isaiah, even though we personify God, this is still a literary device which has no literalness to that. And that's a point that's made very clear by Maimonides, very clear in the Kabbalistic traditions as well. It's the foundation, one of the 13 principles of faith. God has no form or semblance of form. God has no hands, no ears to hear, no eyes to see, and therefore has no personality in which can be offended or angered or anything of the kind. These terminologies and descriptions are used to help us, the everyday people, understand things in a relationship which would make sense to us, meaning those who aren't greater involved. For those of you who have ever studied Zoharic literature or Lurianic Kabbalah, when we talk and speak about God, you'll find that God now becomes extremely complicated. We speak about different, in quote, faces of God. Now, wait a second, didn't the Ten Commandments say no faces upon God? Isn't therefore all of Kabbalah like a contradiction of the Ten Commandments? Well, no, it's not. And why? Because the Kabbalah has always taught, Rabbi Chaim Vital makes it very clear in all his writings that all of these metaphorical descriptions, I just blew it, metaphorical, l'shakechet ha'ozen, to make it so that we can have some semblance of understanding by using a metaphorical language. That's what the Bible does. This is even the surface level of Kabbalah. And this is one of the greatest problems that many of my peers who are teaching Kabbalah, the problem with them is that they read the words of Kabbalah at what we call the pshat level. And they think that what's written is what is. They don't understand the deeper levels of the metaphorical nature of the language that Chaim Vital himself uses in the Kitvei Hari or in the Zohar. So it's very, very important from a scholarly point of view that those who want to evolve in the growth of understanding the reality of spirituality and God, well, you got to study this stuff in a correct way. And that's what, our whole KosherTorah school here is focused on, to try to give you, according to the old biblical, prophetic, Kabbalistic path, direct access and exposure to divine reality. For those who are actual, registered students with us, who are supporting members, who I work with on a personal basis, many times they'll ask me for directions that I refuse to give because I am not a Rebbe, a leader, a guide, a guru, anything. I'm your brother, and I walk hand in hand with you, but you're the one's got to do the walk. My job is maybe to help point you in that right direction, but I can't do it for you. So in that respect, rather than just say, well, this is what it says, this is what you got to believe, and this is what you got to do. No, that's never been the prophetic path. Give an example, right? This is one thing you should know about me personally, right? I believe in the power of God's guidance. I really do. Some people will call me a real crazy son of a gun because I do in life crazy things. I read back to the examples of the biblical prophets. I said, gee, I must be doing something right. I'm as crazy as they were. I believe, I have faith. And in my heart, if I really believe, because I have this sense and this feeling that God is with me, I'm going to go 100%. And that is what, as I have experienced over my many years of practice, what has led me to accomplish in areas of experience. I don't want to say study, experience, it's beyond study, that many of my peers come to me for, because they get to a level, they get to a wall, they get to a plateau, and they don't know where to go because they think, was that all? And I say, no, you have to practice. They are afraid. And I said, let's overcome your fears and move on. That's what our KosherTorah school has always been. Give an example. That's what popped into my head. I teach the Ma'aseh Merkavah school, which is, the deepest school because of the entire tradition. You learn it from tractate Hagigah. It's a one-on-one thing, which is why I try to interact with my Talmidim. This is why, I'm here talking with you. And no, I don't know you personally. I don't have to. You're listening to me. Somehow, somewhere, thoughts are popping up into my head. I got these little images in my mind popping up as I'm speaking, saying, hey, say this, do that, because somehow, somewhere, somebody is out there who needs to hear these words. So maybe there is this great collective consciousness somehow, somewhere, and somebody who's who's going to be watching this video 15 years from now, maybe. Who the heck knows, right? Is having a thought in their head, which is important enough that that thought could be transcending space and time and bonk, and popping into my brain as an idea to say. Is that possible? Oh, that's what happens all the time. Is that happening right now? How am I supposed to know? I'm not supposed to know what's happening 15 years from now. All I know is I'm explaining to you what can be, and I got a thought in my head, and I express it. And I'm actually explaining to you the process of this, not just to tell you what's going on inside my crazy mind, but to let you know it's okay for you too to be crazy. I'm going to share with you something. I have a very, very dear student of our school who unfortunately is going through a very hard time in this person's life right now. And I sit there and I don't let him know that I'm actually smiling because I recognize the nature of this individual's struggle as being part and parcel of one of the highest levels of spiritual accomplishment. This person's really making profound spiritual growth. Doesn't even realize what's going on. And that's life. And, it's not like, person's listening, I'm sure. And, I'll hear about that later, but that's okay. It's okay for you to have experience. No, I'm not off the topic. We're still talking exactly what we need to be discussing. So getting back to where we need to be. Famous Ezekiel's vision, Merkabah. Everybody's so paying attention to all the sound and the light and all the visions of the Hayot and the Keruvim and the wheels and the image of the man on the throne. But no one's paying attention to what the vision came about for. Ezekiel has a vision. The vision is supposed to be a conduit for a message. What's the message of the Merkabah? I should play that Jeopardy music now while you're thinking about it. Do, 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 do. What's the message of the Merkabah? What did God have to say? Yeah, dramatic pause there because no one ever bothers to continue reading into Ezekiel chapter 2 and read the first words. Amod aragleich v'adaberotach. Stand upon your feet and I will speak to you. Ezekiel's so overwhelmed by the experience, as for those people who go through this type of process, it's overwhelming. God doesn't give them a comforting hug and say, okay, sweetie, it's going to be all right. That's what we do with little kids. God wants us to be spiritual adults. And with adults, kind of like a soldier in the military, you get a slap. Stand on your feet. Stand up, soldier. Move forward. Ken Adoni, right? Yes, sir. That's the way we do it. That's what God wants from us. God wants us to be spiritual adults. That means the nature of our spiritual understanding needs to mature beyond spiritual infancy, spiritual adolescence, to the point of spiritual adulthood. For those of you who know Kabbalah, you know exactly what I'm referring to, right? Ibur, Yinika, Gadlut. Stop playing Kabbalah games and thinking you understand what these words mean. Oh, this prescribes to the lower Sephirot or the middle Sephirot. Shut up. I don't even know what Sephirot are. The levels of consciousness. God wants us to evolve in consciousness. God wants us to evolve in personalized, experiential spirituality. That's what it's all about. Transcends religion, transcends religiosity, because it deals with our humanity. So now, is God punishing us? Let's stop before the word punishing and ask, who is this God of whom we speak? Oh, yeah, well, we all know who God is. No, you don't. You think you know what God is. Notice I didn't say who. In the vernacular, in the simplicity, we refer to God as a he. Doesn't the Torah say very clearly God created man in his image, male and female? Whenever we use the Hebrew term Adam, man, it is not a reference to the male of the species. It equally includes the female. Ladies, you are as much Adam, maybe even more so, than any male. Give this insight to what the sages said in Pirkei Avot: in a place where there are no men, strive to be a man. Or, interpreted, In a place where no one stands up and is responsible, you stand up and be responsible. Amod haraglech v'deber. Stand on your feet and I will speak to you. This is why I focus so much in this day and age upon women taking their rightful place as spiritual leaders, not only for Jews in Israel, but for the world. That doesn't mean that they have to be rabbis and posek halacha and lead congregations. I consider that rather silly, personally. I wouldn't want to do that as a rabbi. I don't want any woman to want to do that. Any man, for that matter. All right, crazy job. All right, but that's beside the point. Being a spiritual leader is a role model because you've gone and gotten your PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. You know what life is all about, and you're in a position to be able to speak about that with authority. And I know a good couple of women out there who are really, really ready, able, and willing to take that role as leaders. And I assure you, I'm working with individuals, obvious appropriate halachic ways, to groom them to take such positions. And I hope in not such a long time in the future, you'll see them active, I hope, through our KosherTorah school as teachers in their own right, each teaching within their own contexts. Why? Because bottom line, KosherTorah school is not about me. I'm just a guy here. It's about the message. It's about the experience. And there are other voices that you need to hear as well as mine. Who is this God of whom we speak? Male and female? That in itself has its symbolic meanings, as the Arizal, Chaim Vital, elaborate in such tremendous details in all the Kitvei Hari. For those of you who have never taken my courses in the Treasury of Life book, the Otzorot Hayim, you should consider investing in that. Because when I teach these classes, unlike many of my peers who are just going to tell you what the books say, I tell you what the books mean, like my Rebbe Meir taught me. And I will tell you, just like I told a rabbi earlier this evening, actually, at Mincha Mariv, all of the Kitvei Hari, all of it, is the inner realities of the psychological experiences of our human story. All the partsufim, all the sefirot, all the olamot is within us. This is the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. This is the Torah of Mashiach. Remember a very famous legend taught about the Baal Shem Tov? That at Rosh Hashanah, he had a vision in which he ascended above. Ascend, kind of stuff like we teach here in KosherTorah school. And he saw Mashiach. And he says, all right, we're waiting for you. When are you coming? And he said, when people are going to learn your Torah, and they're going, when your Torah spreads around the world, and people are able to make ascent like you are right now. Well, a lot of the Hasidic groups today claim that they're teaching the Hasidus of the Baal Shem Tov, and they're fulfilling that word. But no, none of them are. None of them, including the big schools I don't need to mention. Why? Because none of them teach the Aliyah school. None of them practice the Aliyah school. None of them understand what it means to have spiritual expansion of consciousness, psychic spiritual ascent, just like the Baal Shem Tov did. There's your example of the proof of what it actually means. That's the prophetic Kabbalah. The good old Ashkenazi Baal Shem Tov, God bless him, was practicing what today pretty much only certain Sephardim practice. And we have to transcend this Sephardi Ashkenazi nonsense as well and get back to tax, brass taxes, that is. God is not a person like you and I. Isaiah, that evolutionary Torah. God's thoughts are above our thoughts. His ways are above our ways. This is the truth of things. This is the reality of things. And in that respect, God doesn't think like we do because God's not human like we are. No, God's not an extraterrestrial like some of my peers on the Ancient Alien program are going to tell you. And, when we're at panels at the Alien Cons, we've got the Alien Con coming up in Baltimore in November 2018 and in Los Angeles in June, if I'm not mistaken, 2019. So, yeah, I'll be speaking there for those of you who want to come join, meet me and greet me and all the rest of that stuff. But anyway, Nope, God's not a little alien. Doesn't come down on a flying saucer. Sorry to my, all my peers there. The Merkava of Ezekiel was not a flying saucer or any other kind of mechanical technological device like some people want to think. But I'm going to tell you another thing. When you do, and you can, have real interactions with real entities who we call angels. I'm not going to talk about the other guys. You're going to find that they are very extraterrestrial. They don't think like we do. They don't feel like we feel. When you want to talk about the Tali, you want to talk about the Watchers, a la Daniel, the guardian angels, or whomever, they're not human like we are. They don't have human emotions, and they are not at God's level. That's true. Not at our level either. Understand that their concepts and understandings of what we would call morality is very, very different than ours. God is not a guy, a man, a person. God is, lack of a better word, the universal cause, the universal consciousness, the supernal mind, the universal thought, right? The spirit, mind, consciousness of existence itself. It's a wee bit bigger than anything you and I could ever grasp. As it says, no man can see God's face and live. Right? Our minds are just not capable. So anything and everything that we want to describe about God just can't. So who is this God who is punishing or rewarding me? Answer. You hear my silence. That's your answer. So when reality strikes us as it does, and we feel we're being punished, and we say, God, I'm being so good. Why does all this stuff have to happen to me? Look at all those bad guys over there. How come something doesn't happen to them? The age-old philosophical question. Why do the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper? This has been discussed in such novels, make-believe stories, as the book of Job. Yeah, Job was not a historical text. It was a novel. Go look at the sages, what they say about that. It's very true. Aside from shocking revelations as such as that, understand now, is God punishing you? Answer, God's a little bit more grandiose than what you would think. And God doesn't actually punish anyone or anything. God does not have a vindictive side. God does not have a vengeance. Well, what does it say in the Bible? I know what it says in the Bible. I know the pshat. And I know the language. And I know that the reason why that language was there was for a need and a necessity in its time. We have evolved in our understanding of that language. And so must you, if you wish to evolve and draw closer to God. That's just the way it is. So now, let's get back. Punishment. There's a very, very profound teaching that the sages teach. Pretty sure the Baal Shem Tov teaches it as well. You want the reality of if God is punishing you or not? Here it goes. It is taught that when an individual does something harmful to another individual, God creates a scenario where in which you as the individual who is harming somebody else sees an activity of someone else doing something to another person, and as you judge that individual, so God judges you. Or in other words, you're doing something to somebody else and you don't want to see it, well, God will show you somebody else doing something to somebody else. And as you judge that individual, that's how God judges you. So if you are a rotten, lousy hypocrite, God shows you another lousy, rotten hypocrite, and you condemn them and fill them with scorn and righteous indignation and anger. God says, oh, that's how you're treating these other people, right? You're not reaching out. You're not helping them. You want to be a son of a gun to them? Really? That's how the universe will act to you. And you'll get to be treated like that son of a gun. Your own words judge you. Your own attitudes judge you. Your own behaviors judge you. You are your own judge. In the afterlife, when you're going to stand before those metaphorical, symbolic pearly gates, and you're going to be standing in front of judgment, the criteria of judgment to which your soul will be judged with is going to be the same exact criteria of judgment that you yourself use to judge everybody else. That's why you might be going to hell for a long time. No, these letters are symbolic metaphor. Don't freak out. Why? Because you're willing to condemn others. What goes around comes around. That's what's going to happen to you. So, why do the righteous suffer? Why do the wicked prosper? Gosh, we could teach a college level master's degree course on this that'll last for hours and hours, because this is a very deep philosophical question. Why does poop hit the fan in your personal life, or for that matter, mine? Well, I'll tell you what. One thing I do, wise words of our sages, things happen. It's mitpashpesh b'ma'asav. Investigate your own behavior. Investigate your own action. Essentially ask, what did I do that contributed to this? There are occasions in life where in which the answer to that question is going to be, honestly and sincerely, nothing. I'm not responsible for this that's happened. What's happening to me is not my fault. Yep. There are circumstances like that. But not that often. Most times, in most ways, if you are honest with yourself and you see the dire situation, the dire straits you're in, you ask, gee whiz, how did I get here? A little bit of self-referral, self-honesty. You might say, gee whiz, I did this to myself. I didn't need the devil to do it to me. I don't need God's punishment on me. Somehow, some way, forgive the language, I screwed up myself. I did this to myself. Sometimes you can extricate yourself. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the harm that we do ourselves, you can't fix. Sorry, but that's the reality of it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You're just going to have to bear the burden of certain decisions that we make in life. This is why I say, when you're going to make a decision, I don't care what it is. I don't care if you go into the store and you're choosing which brand of peanut butter to buy. Just be mindful of your thought process and your decisions. Make your decisions from a position of definitiveness. All right? Matunin badin. Deliberating, and when you make your deliberation, stick with it. No regrets. Don't have regrets after the fact. Why? Simply just don't make the wrong decision in the first place so you won't have anything to regret. Isn't that common sense? I think so. It's supposed to be anyway. Do the right thing. Isn't that the most basic thing? As evolved as our spirituality becomes, it's not supposed to be evolved into a complexity beyond which we cannot understand. It's supposed to evolve into a point of a depth of true experience. Remember I said we had the high prophets and the guys at the top and everyone else at the bottom? Well, the evolution is all these guys in the bottom are supposed to be rising up to the level at the top. Understanding grows. Isn't that what the prophecy of the prophet Yoel said? That everyone's going to get the divine spirit. Prophecy is going to be poured out on everybody. The Messianic Torah, the real one. Jeremiah said everyone's going to know God from the small to the great. Right? We rabbis, thank God, finally going to be out of a job and go do something else. Because everybody's going to know. The psychic, intuitive, experiential level will be there for all of us. Is God punishing you? Most likely, it is you punishing yourself. Is there such a thing as divine reward and divine punishment? Yes. But it's, if you will, allow me to use the word karma. You project positivity in your life. Somehow, some way, sometime that positivity is going to come back to you. You project out negativity to you. Somehow, some way that negativity is going to come back to you. That's how God judges us. And as a controversial an issue as it is, especially in the Kabbalistic tradition, pretty much well embraced by most segments of Orthodoxy today, reincarnation is a part and parcel belief of the Torah path. And if you think about it logically, it kind of makes sense, because ultimately, with all the spiritual evolutions that we need to make, I don't think we get it all done in a single lifetime. It takes time. And somehow, somewhere, we get feelings deep within us, guidance, impressions, things that we know we have to do. We know that we are in a certain way. Well, that might be from past lives, the lessons that you bring with you into this life that guides you and projects you in your spiritual growth. Living by faith is a stitch, and you know what I mean when I say that. It's hard because it requires of you to take steps which are frightening, steps which you might interpret to be dangerous. Remember, like the spies, right? You had 10 of them who freaked out. They couldn't accept that what they were seeing, they could overcome. And only Joshua and Caleb had the power. People were too afraid to listen to them. The conclusion wasn't God's conclusion. God didn't need to prophesy this to say this. But the ultimate reality was, you can take the people out of Egypt, but you couldn't take Egypt out of the people. And therefore, that entire generation that lived in psychological fear couldn't go into the promised land. They would never go into the promised land. They could have lived there for 400 years and they would never have gone in because they didn't have it within them. They had to die. They had to just finish their lives where they were at because they couldn't go anymore, and the next generation would move forward. And that's exactly what happened. Evolutionary, we can do. That level of fear in the past, we can overcome. Like I said, it takes the courage of a Joshua and a Caleb to do it, but we can overcome. So in that respect, when times are tough, grin and bear it. Look to God metaphorically, if you want to say, and say, I'm tough. I can handle it. Whatever you throw my way, I'll deal with it. And boy, oh boy, I've known some real heavy stuff that people have gone through in life. Painful stuff. I've had to counsel people who have lost children, like the cancer and stuff, like the heart-wrenching, terrible things. What words could you say that could even bring comfort under such situations? Breaks my heart like it breaks theirs. I could tell you things, experiences that I've had which tear me down as a human being, of the pains and suffering I've seen other people have. It's life. And I ask God, why do you do that? What do you think? God's going to take me into his boardroom and explain to me what he does every day? Yeah, I wish, but I even understand it. God's thoughts are higher than my thoughts. God's ways are higher than my ways, and I live by faith. And I know somehow, some way, it's all got a reason to it. And I do the best with what I have. And I try not to make mistakes. But I'll be damned if I don't live by the faith that I preach. I will practice what I preach, and I will live by faith, and I will take steps. And some people might think me nuts. So be it. The prophets in the Bible were called Meshuggah. And so I took crazy steps in my life. Many of you are very familiar with some of them. How many of you are willing to abandon a life in a big urban city and move out into the mountains for a 7-year period so you could have isolation and retreat like I did in Tennessee? But I knew that that time period was over. And here we are in Allentown, in a beautiful community. And every day I'm meeting wonderful new people. And we're building our community here. Now, I don't need to build a synagogue. There's already a synagogue. I'm not going to compete with what's already there. We're going to contribute to what's here. We're going to become part and parcel of the greater Jewish family of the Allentown community. And I invite all of you who feel you need a place, come join us. I am here. We are here. We have a great shul. We have a great mikveh. We need kosher restaurants. Any of you are restaurateurs, come in, build businesses. Join our KosherTorah school. Work with me. Let's learn together. I am here to support you, like you are here to support me. Let's see what we can do together. Now, I'll tell you what I want to do at this time. I've answered our questions about divine punishments and the like. I know many of you might have questions, and I'm going to try to fiddle here with my computer and see if I can actually, well, it's going the wrong way. I'm going to lower this. What's going on here? I'm going to have to put on my reading glasses here to see exactly what I'm supposed to do. Why is that? Oh, it is going the right way. Okay, let me go down. If any of you have questions now, okay, I got my little doohickey screen here, and if you had questions before, please, this is the time where I can actually read them. I can't scroll all the way up and look at your questions. Put your questions here. As I see your questions, I can read them now. I got my good old reading glasses on, and I will take a few minutes here and try to answer whatever questions I have. So if you got something to say, now's the time to say it. So I'm going to wait and see if anybody types anything in. If not, we'll say our concluding words and we'll call it a day. Now, you don't need me to be singing to you or humming. But anyway, if and when people are going to comment, I'm just going to tell you. When it comes to understanding the way of God, don't try to put your finger on God and think that you have brownie points. We're coming into the high holiday period. And I know many people go to the synagogue, then they think that they can say their prayers. They dress up in fancy clothes, and they look all nice and all pretty and all that. And they think that they're, in quote, doing the right things. And therefore, God deserves, or they have earned the divine right of a blessing for the year. Well, you know, something doesn't work like that. God, Rahamana libabae, it says in the Gemara, God looks to your heart. God looks to who you are as a human being, an individual, and judges you by who and what you are as a person. I will tell you, God loves courage. I will tell you, God hates panic and fear. This is what living by faith really is. And if you want blessings from God, and this auspicious time, Rosh Hashanah is an auspicious time. There is that universal astrological influence at this time, which has an effect upon human psychology, which therefore affects human behaviors, which therefore changes how we live our lives. This is what this period's all about. So this is a time of new beginnings. The decisions and choices that you make now in faith will guide the entire course of your life. Make the right decisions. Live by faith. Do what you know is right in your heart, not by fear, but by truth. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. Put God before all things. I know a lot of people, for example, have a lot of problems with members of the religious community who act like a bunch of so-and-sos, turning people away from the religion. They're not your role models. They're not your guides. You might have to tolerate them, but you don't follow them. You follow God. You follow His Torah. You gaze into the Torah. You learn the Torah and apply it in strength, in truth, and honesty, and make yourself a better human being. As you will do that, you will be blessed by God. No, that doesn't mean you're going to win the lottery. That doesn't mean that, all of a sudden you're going to, have big muscles or all this other type of superficial external stuff. We still live in a physical world subject to physical laws, and that's just the way it is. But the inner world, which is the domain of the spirit, that is where you have influence. And as you control that inner world of the spirit, and you take control there, and you battle your own personal psychological little demons and win, you will find the repercussions of that expressing in your outside life, giving you all kinds of opportunities, benefits, blessings, prosperity, and the like. And that is how we prosper and receive divine blessings. All right. Let me see if I got any questions here as I go up here. Bum, 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 bum. All right. The Book of Yashar, is it a Kabbalistic text? No. But then again, what is a Kabbalistic text. The book of Yashar is actually referenced in the Bible. It's considered one of the lost books of the Bible. And we have a book of Yashar, spelled with a J, Jashar, that's available today. Obviously, it is certainly not the biblical book. There's obviously no history, connection to verify or validate any such type of relationship. It's a collection of midrashim by that name, very commonly done by our rabbis to put together names and old things, like when Rabbi Eliezer Geter Mizah, famous of Worms, the author of many of the great Kabbalah Svarim, which they over my shoulder there, you should be able to see them. Great stuff. He wrote Raziel Hamalach. The book of Raziel didn't come from Adam, didn't come from the Garden of Eden. It was written by him. Some of the teachings there, right? I'm one of the few people who actually translate from Raziel and teach it. But like Sefer Yashar, it's a collection of midrashim. And what is a Kabbalistic text? Now, I use that word Kabbalah specifically to refer to literature which is Zoharic and beyond, but not pre-Zoharic. So Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, Rabbi Eliezer Gemizah, they wrote mysticism. I don't call it Kabbalah, even though most people today do. That's my shtickle, as they would say in Ashkenazi language. Kabbalah is more a level of understanding things, a mystical level of understanding things, a spiritual way of understanding things. So in that respect, you can look at the Chumash in that light. You can read Chumash of Rashi in that respect. I read the Gemara in that respect. Anything and everything can be Kabbalistic depending on your point of vision and view. So, is the book of Yashar a Kabbalistic text? Answer, don't ask me. Is it a book of Kabbalah to you? All right, let's move on. Okay, if the one we have is real, it's not the text of Kabbalah. Well, again, it all depends on your definition of Kabbalah. I think I've answered that. All right, if God is the collective consciousness and God created good and evil, then is the reason good and evil exist by the hand of God due to our access to the tree of knowledge? Good question, Julie. Julie's one of our students here. Smart. What did I tell you about women who are going to become the spiritual leaders? There you go. I like smart questions. How come you guys aren't asking questions like that? Only the women are asking the spiritual questions. This is proving this to you. Anyway, let me answer Julie's question in brief as we can. The concepts of good and evil are obviously relative within the subjective context of our personal experience and reality. For example, fire. Is fire good or is fire evil? Well, my house burns down, I might not say that fire is good. But at the same time, if I want to cook dinner, then fire is good. So, all depends on human consciousness. The Torah says that God created good and evil. That's true. Yes, God created evil itself. Go read in Isaiah 45:7. But that doesn't mean that we have to integrate evil within ourselves. There are a lot of things that God created in the world, external, which aren't meant to be internal, including really natural stuff. All right? How many of you have ever heard of an herb called hemlock? God created it. It is natural. I really encourage you, don't ingest it because it's poison and you die. God created it. It doesn't mean it belongs inside you. It has a place. Evil has its place. Evil has its purpose. But that purpose and place is not inside of us. When we integrate it within us, then knowledge becomes good and evil. Our job is to rise above good and evil to the point of life, where in which we naturally and intuitively, experientially know the difference between good and evil, what internally belongs within us and what externally belongs outside of us. And that is the balance and the ascent from the symbolic tree of knowledge, good and evil, to the tree of life, or what we call tikkun. Hopefully that answers Julie's question there. All righty. No more questions. Oh my goodness, we're really running short on time here. But okay, listen. When you guys have questions, you can email me questions. I'm really going to get a collection of all of your questions that you want for a Q&A, And we can do an entire session, like from beginning to end, of Q&A. So we'll get to that, and we'll do it. So I'm going to conclude now, because I try to keep things at 45 minutes, and we're already over time, but I want to thank you all for your patience and being here with me for that, and we'll move forward. We're getting down close to the holiday period. Rosh Hashanah is just days away, actually. Don't go into this period thinking that you're going to have brownie points before God. No. Stand before God like Ezekiel was told to. Look God in the symbolic eye in the camera and say, you know what, God? I'm going to be a decent human being this year. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to live by faith. And I am going to make my life better. That's how you symbolically talk to God. That's why in Rosh Hashanah we have no prayers of forgiveness, no crying and praying. We proclaim God to be king. And like in good old Lashon, little old language, in the good old military, right? Kenodoni, right? With a salute, right? We do the right thing because it's right. We walk the life of faith with courage. And this solicits and brings its own blessings. Live with faith, you'll find God's blessings. Live with fear, and you'll find your own fear becomes the punishment that you fear the worst. Let me conclude on that note, okay? Thank you all for listening. God's blessings to us all. I'm your host, Ariel Tzadok here. I thank you for your support of our KosherTorah school. We're in our fundraising period now. We need the support of you, our friends, our students. All right? Please remember us at this time. I'm here for you. I encourage you, please be here for us. Thanks all for listening. God bless until next time. Shalom.